Imagine for a moment being, well, the single most powerful person in the world. You're the emperor of Rome. You're responsible for this vast empire, and it's battling relentless wars, uh, dealing with plague, facing famine. Now, picture that same person right in the middle of all that chaos, writing a private journal. Not about politics or military stuff, but just self-reflection, duty, and trying to find some inner peace. It's kind of an incredible story, isn't it? Behind the meditations of Marcus Aurelius Antoninus. It's this profound piece of Stoic philosophy that he never ever meant for anyone else to read, but it's resonated for almost 2,000 years. So for this deep dive, we've really immersed ourselves in different translations, the introductions to his work, which are quite insightful, and even some fascinating historical letters. We're trying to pull out the real essence of Marcus Aurelius, his thinking, his life. Our mission today really is to unpack the core ideas of this good emperor. We want to understand how his personal philosophy helped him handle an incredibly demanding life, and maybe find some surprising facts and practical wisdom for, our own busy lives. Okay, let's get into it.
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it, how these private notes give us such an intimate look into a mind striving for virtue under just immense pressure. He was born Aemenius Verus, 121 AD, later became Marcus Aurelius Antoninus Augustus, last of Rome's famous five good emperors. He was quite unique, not just emperor, but also nephew, son-in-law, and adopted son of the previous emperor, Antoninus Pius.
So he inherited not just a throne, but a pretty complicated family situation, too. And given he's known as a good emperor, what was the world actually like when he took over? It sounds like it wasn't exactly smooth sailing.
Oh, far from it. Almost immediately, like the moment he took power in 161 AD, Marcus faced just this onslaught of crises. In the east, you had Vologeses III of Parthia destroying a Roman legion, invading Syria. At the same time, this huge coalition of tribes, Marcomanni, Quadi, Sarmatians, others, just exploded on the northern frontier.
So basically wars on all sides.
Right after he took power.
Just as he took power. That's quite the welcome wagon.
Exactly. So the challenges, they weren't just external. Domestically, Rome got hit by a really severe pestilence. It was brought back, apparently, by his legions from the east, and then widespread starvation because floods ruined the grain supplies. It got so bad, Marcus actually had to sell off imperial jewels to raise money. That tells you something, all right?
Wow, selling the crown jewels, basically.
Pretty much. And to make things worse, his co-emperor, the one he adopted, Lucius Verus, he was, well, let's just say he was more into partying and debauchery than fighting wars. He eventually died in 169 AD. Actually during the campaigns. So Marcus was dealing with that too.
A co-emperor more interested in partying than fighting. What incredible circumstances. Were there any specific moments or maybe legends from his campaigns that really show the kind of pressure he was under?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. There's a famous story from a battle against a Quadi tribe around 174 AD. The Romans were apparently in really dire straits, pinned down, maybe out of water, and suddenly this huge storm hits, thunder, rain, lightning. It terrified the barbarians. They fled, and the rain saved the Roman soldiers. Now, the idea that it was a legion of Christians praying that caused it, that's a later legend. But the storm itself, that's acknowledged, even shown in Antonin's column. It just shows the desperate situations he faced.
Desperate situations, indeed. And beyond the huge imperial burdens, his personal life. That was also incredibly tough, wasn't it? Lots of personal grief.
It really was. I mean, while managing an empire, he lost many of his own children. Just imagine that grief. Only one son, Commodus described in the sources as weak and worthless, survived to succeed him. And sadly, Commodus went on to undo a lot of his father's good work. So even his legacy was kind of shadowed by this personal tragedy.
And yet, he still gets called a good emperor. Where does that reputation come from with all this going on? And how do we square that, the idea of a good emperor with what our sources mention, the persecution of Christians? That seems like a contradiction, especially for a Stoic.
That's a really important question. His good reputation mainly comes from his administration.
Yeah.
He focused on justice, tried to protect the vulnerable, the weak, slaves, orphans. He set up charitable foundations for poor kids, tried to shield the provinces from, exploitation. But as you say, there's what the sources call the great blot on his name, persecuting Christians, figures like Justin and Polycarp. The source we looked at suggests this might have stemmed from sort of slander against the Christians and maybe a failure on Marcus's part, a failure of duty, to really find out the truth about them. There's definitely a complex part of his history, that tension between his philosophy and those actions.
Yeah, that's a powerful point. A reminder that even the good figures in history are complex. It also kind of highlights that gap left by traditional Roman religion, which, as the sources say, offered small satisfaction, didn't really focus on morality. So people, these devout souls, they turned to philosophy instead. Amidst all these challenges, what was the absolute bedrock of Marcus's philosophy? What did he lean on?
He leaned heavily on Stoicism. And the absolute core, the foundation of the Stoic practice, was this idea of living in conformity with nature. In Greek, that's homologumenos toia physeison. For Stoics, that was virtue understanding the natural order of the universe and aligning yourself with it. To really get it, you have to understand that Stoics saw the universe itself as like a rational divine entity, basically God, and our individual souls. They believed they were emanations, little sparks of that divine whole destined to return to it. This divine ruling principle, this cosmic reason, makes everything work together for the good of the whole universe. So the highest good for a person, in that view, was to consciously choose to work with God or with nature for the common good of everyone.
Okay, and here's where it gets really, really interesting for me. A huge part of Stoicism and Marcus's practice is this concept of indifference to externals, or adiaphora. This gets misunderstood a lot, I think, as just not caring, but it's way more nuanced, right?
Exactly, it's crucial. For Stoics, only virtue is truly good and only vice is truly bad. Everything else, things we usually label good or bad, health, sickness, wealth, poverty, pleasure, pain, they're technically indifferent. That doesn't mean they don't exist or you don't feel them. It means they aren't good or bad in themselves. They're just the raw material, the sphere in which virtue may act. The ideal Stoic wise man was described as autarkous, sufficient unto himself, happy even if he was being tortured on the rack. Now, they admitted this was an ideal, maybe unreachable, but the key insight for us, dealing with constant news cycles and personal ups and downs, it's that real peace doesn't come from avoiding bad things, but from choosing where you place your ultimate value. It's like the ultimate mental hack. Focus on what you can control, your thoughts, your choices, your actions, not the external stuff you can't.
So less about not feeling pain, more about not letting pain define your inner state, your well-being, which connects directly to that idea of controlling your own mind, your perception. Marcus writes, I think it's book 2, all is but opinion and conceit. Basically, your perception shapes your reality. And later in book 12, he says something like, take thine opinion away, get rid of that judgment, and then a present calm, like a ship reaching a safe harbor. It's about creating that internal refuge.
Exactly. And if you zoom out, this focus on inner control and indifference to externals, it also fueled this really strong insistence on the unity of the universe and on our duty as part of that big whole. This public spirit, as the introduction to one translation calls it, was seen as maybe the most splendid political virtue of the ancient world. It wasn't just about Rome, it was a kind of cosmopolitan sense of duty to humanity. He believed deeply that whatever happens to you as an individual ultimately happens for the good of the whole cosmos, and that we're all interconnected like limbs of one body. And this deep sense of connection and responsibility, it naturally led him to structure his life, his daily thoughts, in a very particular way.
Yeah, that sense of duty, that mental discipline, it just shines through in the meditations. It really feels like a practical toolkit for living. Like he started his day with this incredible mental prep exercise, one of his most famous quotes, right? Betimes in the morning say to thyself, this day I shall have to do with an idle, curious man, with an unthankful man, a railer, a crafty, false, or an envious man. All these ill qualities have happened unto them through ignorance of that which is truly good and truly bad. Wow. What a way to steel yourself for the day.
It's so pragmatic, isn't it?
Yeah.
It acknowledges people's flaws, but frames them as stemming from ignorance, not pure malice. It allows for patience. He also constantly reminded himself of the transience of life and fame. He'd write things like, remember how long thou hast already put off these things. It is high time for thee to understand. And the time of a man's life is as a point, the substance of it ever flowing. Our life is a warfare and a mere pilgrimage.
He really hammers that home. Consider how quickly all things that are forgotten. And even more bluntly, within a very little while thou would be either ashes or a skeleton, and a name perchance, and perchance not so much as a name. So his conclusion is, why bother seeking fame after you're dead? It really puts things in perspective, makes you think about your own priorities. Exactly right. And that awareness of mortality, it wasn't meant to be depressing. It was a motivator, a catalyst to live virtuously now. It also informed his idea of the power of inner retreat. He wrote, famously, a man cannot any whither retire better than to his own soul. He especially, who is beforehand provided of such things within, which whensoever he may be at rest and free from all businesses.
Yeah.
That was his mental sanctuary. Amidst all the chaos of running an empire, it's so relevant for us today in our hyper-connected, always-on world.
And it wasn't just about finding his own peace, it shaped how he dealt with other people too. He seems to have had this profound sense of compassion and understanding for others, even people who annoyed him or did wrong. Absolutely.
Hmm?
He advised, the best kind of revenge is not to become alike unto them. Simple, but powerful. He also pushed for, like, direct, rational engagement instead of just getting angry. Be not angry, neither with him whose breath or armholes are offensive. A very visceral example. Let thy reasonable faculty work upon his reasonable faculty. Show him his fault, admonish him. He genuinely seemed to believe people mess up mostly through ignorance and against their wills that they sin. He even concluded it's crazy a madman's part to expect a world without difficult or wicked people because it is impossible. That viewpoint must have fostered incredible patience.
That is incredibly practical advice for anyone in charge or just dealing with tricky colleagues, even now. He also framed life itself in this really interesting way, like preparing for a fight. He said, the art of true living in this world is more like a wrestler's than a dancer's practice. For in this they both agree to teach a man whatsoever falls upon him, that he may be ready for it, and that nothing may cast him down.
That wrestler analogy, it perfectly captures the Stoic idea of being ready for hardship, building resilience, training for whatever life throws at you. And maybe one of the most beautiful, enduring images he gives us is this. Look within. Within is the fountain of all good. So, such a fountain where springing waters can never fail, so thou dig still deeper and deeper. It's this call to keep working on yourself, that the resources are inside you.
Hmm. It's those glimpses of his personal discipline, his inner world, that really make you feel like you're getting to know the actual man, not just the emperor. The first book of the Meditations is so unique in that way. It's almost like a gratitude journal, isn't it? He just lists all the things he learned from his family, his mentors. It's a really unusual, kind of endearing way to start a philosophy book.
It really is, and it gives
Yeah.
us amazing insight into who shaped him. He thanks his grandfather Verus for teaching him, gentleness. His adoptive father, the Emperor Antoninus Pius, gets this huge list of praises: meekness, his constancy, freedom from all vanity, laboriousness, impartiality, care for the common good, not superstitious, honored all true philosophers. Marcus even compared him to Socrates, especially praising his father's moderation, his ability to handle both having things and not having things without losing his balance.
That's incredibly high praise. And it wasn't just his father, right? He credits his mentors with so much. People like Diognetus and Rusticus taught him not to waste time on trivial stuff, to avoid superstition, give up fluffy rhetoric and poetry for serious philosophy.
Yeah, Rusticus apparently even steered him towards reading Epictetus, another key Stoic. And Apollonius taught him true liberty and unvariable steadfastness, how to be the same man, whether he was in sharp pain or grieving the loss of a child. These aren't abstract lessons, they're about deep character formation. They paint a picture of someone intensely focused on self-cultivation.
So we have this picture, the strong image of the stoic, self-reflecting emperor deep in thought. But then you look at the letters between him and his old tutor, Fronto, the rhetorician, and you see, well, a different side, don't you? It's funny, Marcus only mentions Fronto once in the Meditations, and it's almost a bit dismissive, saying Fronto taught him the highly born often lack natural affection. But the letters, they tell a much richer story.
Oh, completely. Those letters show this deep, ongoing respect and real affection between them, long after Marcus was emperor and had, moved beyond just rhetoric. There's a fascinating example involving Herodes Atticus. Herodes had also been one of Marcus's teachers, but Fronto ended up prosecuting him in some case. And Marcus wrote to Fronto very gently, very diplomatically, basically asking him to stick to the facts and leave personal attacks out of it.
Mm.
It shows Marcus the pragmatist, the wise leader, balancing loyalty and principle.
And what about the more everyday human stuff? The letters seem full of that too, kind of pulling back the imperial curtain.
Absolutely. Marcus writes to Fronto about, finding a scorpion in his bed, or his sister having a sudden pain, his mother getting an accidental bruise. He writes about struggling with a cold, having too much phlegm. There's this wonderful, detailed description of a day in the country. He talks about hunting boar, reading Cato, writing some wretched trifle of his own, the noise and sweat of the grape harvest, even gossiping with his mother about Fronto himself. It makes him so much more relatable, doesn't it? Far from just some abstract philosopher king.
It really does. And isn't there also a really poignant letter from Fronto talking about his own immense grief, losing 5 children, his wife, his grandson?
Yes, that letter from Fronto is heartbreaking. It powerfully humanizes the whole Stoic ideal, doesn't it? It reminds us that even these elite Romans, trying to practice philosophy, felt sorrow incredibly deeply. Marcus himself wasn't just meditating, he was also engaged in other literary stuff. He mentions collecting extracts from 60 books, including plays and farces. And he had sharp opinions, like his take on the orator Polemo, saying his work was for use rather than for pleasure, something you might commend but not really love. These aren't the thoughts of someone detached. They show an active, critical, self-aware mind.
So, wrapping this up, what does all this mean for you listening today? Marcus Aurelius lived in a world really of constant information, threats, personal demands, maybe not so different from ours in some ways. His meditations, they offer a kind of shortcut, not to avoid life's challenges, but to process them internally, to manage them.
Exactly. For you, trying to navigate your own demanding life, maybe it's information overload, difficult people at work, the pressure to achieve, Marcus, offers these timeless tools. You can try that morning mental prep to kind of inoculate yourself against daily frustrations. You could use the idea of life's transience to get ruthless about what truly matters, maybe freeing yourself from chasing external validation that won't last. And remember that inner retreat, that fountain of all good, is always there. You just have to make the effort to dig deeper, as he put it. It's really a method for turning external chaos into internal order. It shows the power really lies within.
Ultimately, I think the enduring message from Marcus Aurelius is pretty straightforward. Try to be good just for the sake of being good. Align yourself with nature, with reality. Understand that most of your suffering probably comes from your opinion about things, not the things themselves. And embrace your duties, whatever they are, with a sense of grace. His philosophy isn't just some ancient text. It feels like a genuinely practical guide for building resilience and finding some serenity in this pretty complex world. But here's a final thought to leave you with.
Yeah.
Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher king, the one constantly reminding himself life is short, fame means nothing. In his very last letter to Fronto, his old mentor, he apparently wrote that he longed for Fronto more than Rome itself. Makes you wonder, doesn't it? In a life aimed at stoic indifference, where does something like deep love, human connection, where does that truly fit? And how does it shape our journey, even when we're striving so hard for that inner calm?
Hmm.
Something to maybe mull over on your own.